Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Digital Edge podcast. I'm Dominik with my co-host Francoise,
Hello, Dominik.
and we talk about technology, innovation, and digital transformation. So today we're going to go into a very fun topic. What is the right budget for digital transformation? And maybe to get started, Francoise, do you have some numbers for us?
Yeah, I mean, as a rule, I would say it's never enough, but beyond
As
that,
the CIO, yes.
beyond that, yeah, I've found some numbers that could be some, guidelines. And first of all, it really depends on the industry.
Mhm.
It's not the same whether you are in banking or in e-commerce, for example. So let's start with financial services. Usually we look at the budget in terms of percentage of annual revenue. And for financial services, it's between 4 and 10%.
That's a
I
big
would
range.
say, yeah, I would say that most of the money is going to data at the moment, AI and automation. This is really where it's going. If we look at manufacturing, it's a bit lower, between 2 and 5%. And
Mhm.
in that case, spending would go to process automation and also IoT.
Mhm.
Retail e-commerce is usually the highest because it needs to be at the forefront, and they always looking at driving multi-channel, omni-channel experience for the customers, personalization and analytics. And for healthcare and professional services, it's around 3 to 8%. In healthcare, there is a lot to be done in terms of the patient data, patient file. We also have innovation in terms of telehealth and remote diagnostic or remote procedures. And there is also, a care given to compliance and confidentiality, obviously. And in professional services, it's usually automation and client experience.
Mhm.
So, I mean, ranging from, low 2% to 12% in e-commerce, we see that there is a wide range of figures on one side, but also a mix in terms of where the money is going. That it's not going to the same type of projects. Does
Yeah.
this reflect what you had in mind?
Yes, I think that's very, very fascinating, right? It's a huge range, right? If you have organizations of different sizes, right? And these enormous budgets at the end of the day, again, like you said, the CIO will always say more could be done with a greater budget. But I think that's the fascinating aspect of it when you have, let's say a fixed allocation and you have to make decisions about where you best invest. And the key piece here is, or I think the threat is that companies spend too much in keeping the lights on in operational topics, right? Investments that just keep the business running, basically. Have you seen anything in that regard about the shift between, how much you invest into, of course, keeping the business running versus investing into growing the business?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. The lion's share always goes to maintenance and upgrades and licenses of the existing systems, especially as licenses have increased in
Right.
pricing. This
Hmm.
is eating a lot of, of the budget, and usually innovation, new developments are always a smaller proportion.
Hmm.
I haven't seen the reverse. Maybe in startups it would be different, but in large organization, usually, the run business is much larger than the
Hmm.
new projects and innovation.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think on that topic, one recommendation that I have typically is to not accept the status quo in the operational environment. right? What happens sometimes, right? You have existing software, you have people that are trained to operate systems usually effectively, right? And you have vendors that are also maintaining a relationship where you're then more inclined to keep going on the platforms that you're running, right? So it's all this environment, right? And the difficulty of change makes it difficult to say, hey, we're going to look at competition and see if there's value in maybe switching to a different product, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's something to keep in mind as well. If there's enough upside of going maybe to a new competitor or somebody who's more hungry to make quite a big distinction.
And if we look at the breakdown of the budget, in line with what you said, at least a third and sometimes up to half of the budget is going to infrastructure and technology.
Right.
Cloud integration, new data platform, cyber security. I mean, it's not maintenance, but it's not far from that. I mean, it's not bringing anything new to the business as such. So yeah, that's already eating a big chunk of the budget. And then the other part, the rest is more or less breaking even in terms of process automation, customer experience, data analytics. The rest is more or less between 10 and 15% of the budget. But as you said, the large chunk is still going to infrastructure and technology. And I mean, this is, as you said, a lot of maintenance and not really, driving business innovation.
Yeah. On the innovation front, right, which is kind of like my favorite area to invest in, because that's where you can really get benefit into the operational environment, right? Again, exploring new technologies, looking for process improvement that can reduce costs in many cases. But one thing that I see is overlooked also is the innovation part by enhancing products and services, even if the company is not in the business of digital products. Right? Because in operating environments, you typically see that, hey, let's make our processes more efficient, let's reduce waste, let's be more compliant, let's just basically reducing cost and increasing speed. But it's a different conversation, I think, if you have let's say if somebody builds bicycles, a company makes bicycles and they say, hey, how can we enhance bicycles that the consumer has a better experience with the bicycle, right? Maybe they say, hey, let's build in a computer and provide analytics and show the health of the bicycle so that people are more engaged or can tune or maintain their bicycle or whatever, right? I think there's more to be done in looking beyond the straight operational aspects into enhancing products. And I think there should be more invested at many companies in that regard as well.
And I think maybe one of the issues I have faced, at least in my previous life, was how to present or calculate or measure a return on investment on those budgets. And I mean, to your point, if it's about a new product that is going to drive more sales and more customer satisfaction, I think there is a case you can build on the investment. But when it's about maintaining your system, building a new infrastructure, developing a more database, whatever, it's very hard to prove the return on investment.
Yeah.
And I remember I was always fighting because some of these investments are absolutely necessary to build the foundations for the future.
Yeah.
And I was always asked, what is the ROI? And I was saying, if you give a computer to an employee for the employee to work, do you expect an ROI, or is this just something they have to be able to work? So some of this investment, from a financial point of view, we should, in a way, not look for return, but just it's a necessary, like a sunk cost to maintain the business alive. I've always had those internal fights with finance, and when it's budget time,
Yeah.
how to justify some of these spendings.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you don't do it, the business can't effectively function anymore, right? But I can see the side of the non-technologist as well, right? To say, hey, we're spending all this money, and the only thing that we get is a new software update that more or less does the same thing as what we could do before, right? So the justification is, it can be difficult to be made, right? And so for whatever situation that we're in right now with subscriptions of services and supportability of software, it is really an almost a fixed cost, right? A cost of doing business, for better or worse.
Yeah. And when we talk about budgets for digital transformation, we very often talk only about the technology. But there is this, change management that should not be neglected. And usually this is never translated into dollar amounts. We never say, oh, we need this much budget to train the people, or we need, this to communicate, etc. This is very often neglected, and I think that's why we have so many failures in terms of implementation, because we don't even think about the change management, the training of people, and then when we realize that we didn't do it, it's often too late.
Yeah, no, I love that point. That's a really great perspective, because this is also what prevents, right? If you have an organization that is very ingrained with one set of technologies, and you're not able to pivot to a competitive product per se, right? You can never look at anything else, and it makes it very difficult to do things in a different way, right? And that's I love that point. Very, very important.
So I think my takeaways from our discussion is, one, that it's not a one size fits all. Every company will have to adjust the budget based on their industry, based on where they need to invest, but also probably based on their maturity. If they are just starting, it's going to be more expensive than if they have invested year over year. And I think the other point is what we just discussed, is that it's not only about technology. We need to make sure that we include change management in the budget as well.
Yeah, humans involved in everything. Yeah, I think the budget that an organization has, an IT organization or what have you, right? It is what it is. I mean, you can always go argue for more, right? But there's other considerations in a business where money needs to be spent. But I think the magic really lies in allocating the funds that you have properly and appropriately, right? Because distinguishing between a cost saving on the one hand was what the CFO probably asked for, versus investments that you can make to enhance products to increase revenues. I think there's a important case to be made, and that's something that I recommend to our listeners to look into and be considered about.
Thank you so much for the discussion and the insights, Dominik, and talk to you very soon.
Yeah, great discussion, Francois. Thank you. See you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.